I'm going to talk today about a topic that's almost rude to talk about in polite company. I'm going to speak very, very briefly, fast, about power and the changing nature of power by virtue of our increasingly ubiquitous and powerful information networks. Everybody talks about Facebook, Google, Twitter, Facebook, Google, Twitter, Facebook, Google, Twitter, Facebook, Google, Twitter, Facebook, Google, Twitter. Those are three important components of it, but there's actually a very powerful ecosystem of technologies the world around, mobile, social, all of these other different technologies which are now reaching the world around. When I was in Congo, in East Congo, I got off a military plane in one of the poorest places on planet Earth. My BlackBerry, when I got off the plane, it went chirp, 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 and I had a choice of 3 different mobile networks. And the most interesting thing about this for me is when it comes to this topic of power. I'm not a technologist. I'm not a geek. I was a history major. And I now work for America's foreign policy. So for me, these technologies are principally interesting insofar as they impact this, power. A lot of people talk about the devolution, the changing nature of power going from west to east, from Europe and the Americas to Asia, and power going from north to south. My experience working for Hillary Clinton for the last 2.5 years, traveling the world around, is that the real shift in geopolitical power is not from west to east and north to south. It is from hierarchies to citizens. It is from governments and large institutions to individuals and small institutions. Now, this is a very sophisticated group of people, so I want to ask you all a question. Raise your hand if you can give me the name of one revolutionary leader from Tunisia, Egypt, or Syria other than Wael Ghonim. Raise your hand. 2 hands are up. 2. The reason for that is that information networks have taken the historic revolutionary figure, the Nelson Mandela, the Václav Havel, the Lech Walesa, and that political influence has gone from being a charismatic man inspiring and organizing the masses to now it is more networked. And that's why only 2 of you rose your hands. I say something very controversial sometimes, which gets me in trouble, but I've said it before, so I'll say it again. And it's the Che Guevara of the 21st century is the network. What I mean by that is that the revolutionary leader is now networked. It's now distributed through hundreds of people. It's not one face that you're going to put on a t-shirt. It's not one man who's going to come together and govern a country in a future with all of the consensus of his countrymen behind him, as Nelson Mandela was in South Africa, as Václav Havel was in Czechoslovakia, as Lech Walesa was in Poland. This fragmentation of power has been remarkable. A lot of attention gets paid to this in the political realm, but I also think that more attention needs to be paid to it in the economic realm. And I think for those of you in French industry and European industry, this is actually more significant, the devolution of power from large institutions to small institutions and its impact on economic power. And just by way of a short illustration, 12 years ago, the cost of running a basic internet application was 100,000 euro per month. 100,000 euro per month, which meant that if you wanted to start an internet-based business, you had to raise a Series A round of venture capital, and you had more than €1 million per annum in fixed capital costs. Today, the exact same application costs €1,000 per month. What that means is that the barrier to entrepreneurship has been significantly lowered. You no longer need a Series A round of venture capital. You can literally build a company based on a handful of lines of code. This has given, in the United States, the rise to incubators, to more dorm room entrepreneurs than could be imaginable. And when I think about countries like France, I think that this is very exciting, because what it means is that the next generation of Western economic prosperity can come in part based on this devolution of power, where people can build the businesses and industries of the future for a technology-rich, knowledge-based economy. Now, in the face of this, what scares people oftentimes in elite audiences is the loss of control. The 21st century is a lousy time to be a control freak. There was a time not long ago when employers like mine at the State Department, what we sought was the maximum amount of control over a situation possible. Today, this devolution of power, this networking of global society, makes control an illusion. And in the face of this, it makes things like the conduct of foreign policy much more challenging. And so to the extent that you're going to exert influence, it's not going to be based on control. Now, any of you who understand power, and from the looks of this audience, many of you understand power, you understand that power is not given up willingly. So as power devolves from the nation state and large institutions to individuals and small institutions, the large institutions and the nation state will fight back. So as this transfer of power takes place, blood will get spilled. Governments the world around will put massive censorship regimes in place. They will put massive surveillance regimes in place. They will infiltrate, monitor, and manipulate networks to identify dissent and punish it and imprison it. So it's important, recognizing the shifting nature of power, to not be utopian about it, and to recognize that incumbent powers will fight back. And further, the use of this technology is not always used for democracy or for positive purposes. I'm in Paris right now because yesterday my good friend Nicolas Princen from President Sarkozy's office and I convened 21 nations here in Paris at the Élysée to talk about innovation and diplomacy. And one of those with us was my friend Khaled al-Mufti from Libya, who reestablished communication, a revolutionary hero in Libya, who reestablished communications in Libya using the remnants of Gaddafi's old network and what have you. And I'm very excited about the work that Khaled and other of my friends are doing around the world, but part of what's important to remember is that this technology is value neutral. It takes on the values and the intentions of its users. My boss, Hillary Clinton, likes our information networks to nuclear power. She says it can fuel a city or it can destroy a city. The technology itself is inanimate until a user takes it on. And so, by way of conclusion, what I would simply say is it's not chapter 1, page 1, but it's chapter 2, page 1 in our very new history of networks. And when I think about political well-being and when I think of economic well-being, what I believe is that the future is going to be made up increasingly of network effects that oftentimes manifest themselves through individuals and ad hoc networks, as opposed to in the traditional hierarchical way. So with that, I've been the amuse-bouche tonight, I think. Thank you very much.